Okay, I hope this recording doesn't suck. My cat is really annoying right now. She's been sick, and here, how about I pick you up? No? Okay, fine, then go bugger off. My husband has, and my daughter have gone off to, I don't know, take care of stupid medical stuff because I live in the United States and it's stupid as hell. Anyway, I'm just gonna go stream of consciousness with us. I mostly just want to talk about some of the stuff I've been doing. So, first of all, I'm gonna go to DeviantArt. Now I have some of the stuff blocked off because some stuff, I'm just gonna leave it this way because I just don't feel like fiddling around with it and just wasting people's time. So, in um, on my gallery, in DeviantArt, which a lot of people don't use anymore because they were using the website because it's owned by, I think it's Wix now, which is not the original developers or creators or whatever. And they were using it to train AIs. They have their own AIs, which they honestly suck. And I've been doing stuff with AIs also. Just testing them, whatever, for years. I'm not always impressed with them. It depends on what you mean by AI. Generative AI, language models, predictive text, machine learning, whatever. Anyway, the thing with AI is people hate it, or if you're doing stuff with it. So over on, I have a tendency, I've been playing around in Suno since October, which has been a mixture of honestly very interesting good things. There's frustration with it as well. And no, I don't think my credits did reset. That's weird. I have no, it didn't. No, it didn't. False. I have 0. Every time I come on here, I get some new activity. There's a whole side to Suno going on here. I'll just briefly mention it because I've mentioned it before. For example, like if I go to home here and it loads, you'll see this, and there is a community of like actually real people who are professional musicians, who are trained, who that's their thing, and they do real singing, real music production, as well as in conjunction with the Suno AI. I've seen many videos about this. There is a community of people, and I gotta be completely honest, like I've had a lot of fun with this. I have also received an insane amount of hate from people I personally know. Now, I could bring up actually, I think I blogged about it, but I'm not going to put that post. Anyway, I've been figuring out stuff with this site. This is like a really old blogging site, which the McCarthyists would like to scare you based on like the 1950s or whatever. Like, there's no Soviet Union. It doesn't exist. The Berlin Wall fell down. And I'm always doing research. Like, I'm always doing research. And I'm not going to post the link to this at all. So if your brain is working, you could actually type in everything you see here and watch all of this. I also have been going to some of my old blogs, which I probably will link. And I have been revisiting my old ideas, my old concepts. I mean, I've even written business plans for this. That's a whole long freaking story of misery and pain and being screwed over and depression and just so much work that I did only to be screwed over for every freaking thing I tried to do for not even myself, for everybody else. And, yeah. I'm showing all of this for reasons. So I'm showing there's certain aspects of wind turbines, and I know that there is some pushback to wind turbines and solar. However, for all of the pushback on wind and solar and clean energy, you're looking at it from a contrived, ignorant, for-profit, like there's so many schemes and scams, and I could go on and on about this, but there is aspects of this kind of technology that are not the crappy, like, blue no matter who, carbon credits, taxation, cap and trade bullshit. I'm talking about, like, actual science, actual facts, actual history of this stuff. And so I'm bringing up a lot of these things because, okay, so I know this might seem like random. I was here for a reason. And here as well. So, anyway, we're just gonna go with this. So, when it comes to energy and mechanics and pneumatics, automata, robotics, cybernetics, a lot of things, there is an origin to a lot of these things, and much of it is sort of lost or sort of only told from not the beginning, but more like the third act or something, so to speak. So I have a variety of clips here. Let's see if it plays. So this is stuff like wind turbines. This is an Archimedes screw wind turbine. Okay. And it's kind of ironic because my father's actually an electrician. And yet he's not interested in the clean energy stuff at all. This is somebody making wind turbines with... So there's vertical axis wind turbines, and I promise there are reasons why I'm bringing this up. I'm so fed up with just people are lazy as fuck. People just oftentimes tend to defer to the status quo. People are just so freaking lazy. Sometimes it's like this smugderant thing. I'm just so fed up with it. And so here we go. Here's a person who's used repurposed PVC pipes to make a windmill or a propeller or a turbine or whatever. And here we go. He's just screwing all of this in for cheap. Okay? And this is a vertical axis.
Stand up, 'cause girl, you.
Hold on. This is a vertical axis wind turbine. Anybody could do this research. Anybody can learn this stuff. Anybody can understand this. This is so basic, so simple. Anybody can do this. Here's another vertical axis. This is a guy who did a wind turbine for $32. Here's a repurposed fan as a turbine. And here's another vertical axis, right? And these things can be repurposed either to generate electricity or other things.
I'm pretty...
Here we go. Here's another vertical axis. There you go. That's an anemometer, which measures wind speed. I have a diploma in environmental sciences, so I apologize if you don't know what that is, or an anemometer. Here's another kind of wind turbine. Here we go, vertical axis wind turbine. There's a lot of this. There's so many things of aspects of interest in this. And this might just seem novelty or just a quirky point of interest or whatever, but I promise, like, these things, when you understand them, can be combined. And this is something that I've known pretty much my entire adult life. And yet, here we are in the stupid situation that we're in currently. And here we go. This is just somebody, I think, used cardboard or vinyl. I think it's cardboard. The Archimedes screw is very popular. I've come across a number of those recently. Here's another one. how to make an Archimedes wind turbine, right? Then another thing of interest is these sea organs. There's different ones. And the one in, I think it's in England, was taken down. Like the Blackpool high tide organ. Here's the Zadar sea organ. Now, sometimes these are called tide organs, wave organs, sea organs. And see what loads here. San Francisco's wave organ. And when the wave comes in, the tide comes in, it plays like ASMR, like sounds, music, tones, musical notes and stuff. And this is the Blackpool one, and I believe it's in England. And it actually had like a whole musical notes. It was intended to last for 12 years and then to be taken down. But people in the area so loved it, including the management in the town. I don't know what their system is called. It's different than here. I don't know if they have mayors or prefects or whatever. But in the town council or whatever, they liked this installation so much that they just left it there, but it wasn't maintained. And then the artist who created this sea organ, wave organ, I don't know, tide organ, whatever you want to call it, he kept going to the council and he was like, you have to take it down. This could hurt people. It could break. It could cause damage. It could da 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 da. So it eventually was taken down because it wasn't maintained. And then there's this there's one in, is it the Czech Republic or is it the Balkan Sea? I can't remember. The Invincible Sea Organ. And then this is the one in San Francisco. This one is super interesting to me. So a lot of these things, so these kinds of, so this is the Blackpool one, and this is the San Francisco one. There's the Blackpool one again. And then this is the Zadar. Oh, it's Croatia. It's Croatia. So these things have fascinating, here you go, Zadar again. I'm not going to play it here because I don't want to get like copyright or whatever, striked or whatever. But these things actually do have a positive effect on the community, because a lot of times when these things are first installed, it's weird, it's strange, people are like, ew, what the heck? But then what happens is people sort of like bond to it and they appreciate it for the massive aspect of it. And you're basically using nature and the energy in nature to do something. And a lot of times these things have a kind of ASMR effect, which is soothing and calming, even though sometimes it could be a little haunting or a little eerie or whatever. But people overall, with all of these installations, over time, after like a year or two, people have a tendency to love them. And then even when the Blackpool one was taken down, people fought so hard to keep it because they did not want to lose it. It was just this thing that just, it was just moving to people. I think this is kind of like the power of like ASMR and sound. This is also kind of like why I feel like people like what do you call it, like wind chimes and stuff. The wind moves, the air moves, and then you hear like a sound, right? And then there's things like the Dutch windmills, and the technology from the Dutch windmill is straight up, like they make it sound like, oh, the Dutch just out of nowhere just made windmills or something. When actually a lot of the technology was from ancient Egypt, like the Library of Alexandria. And these things, it's so interesting because like these things do not use electricity, they use the wind. And some of these things have been there for over 1,000 years. Like, actually, like, was it like 1,600 years? So somebody who had the knowledge, probably from the Crusades, what was it, the 12th century? Maybe from the Crusades. They went to the Middle East, and the Arabs never deleted this information. And they took the knowledge to Europe, and then so the Zealand and most of the Netherlands, like it's actually called Nederland. It's very flat. I've been there. And it was originally under the sea, under the ocean, under the sea. And then they use these to this day to pump the water out. And you can find in many places like buoys and anchors all over the ground, and they have crops and stuff. And this is really interesting to note because they've tried to eliminate the farmers there in the past few years, which is stupid. And these things, some of these things are centuries old and they still work. And these are a number of these things. They make flour. There's so many practical things that they do and they sell and produce to this day. And I just find that fascinating. Another thing to note is the word Dutch, about 400 years ago, just meant German, right? And it's today Dutch and Deutsch are considered different things, but they all have a common ancestry. They're all Germanic. It's also funny when I listen to people speaking Dutch, there's some words that sound like English, like exactly like English, and other words that sound like German. Probably because, well, so I have a Pennsylvania Dutch heritage, which when they came here were just referred to as German. So, then when it comes to solar panels and solar stuff, everybody is still stuck in the 20th century and their ideas and their concepts and the for-profit crap and the greenwashing, and it's really vexing to me because there's so many other kinds of stuff that I have been aware of since like the Clinton era or the Bush era, like early Bush era, and yet you don't know about it. And this Hope and Change guy, I could go on a whole fucking diatribe about this. He had a website called change.gov and a YouTube channel, and you could contribute your ideas. And we're talking millions upon millions of people, including people internationally, would go to that website and put their ideas up. I oftentimes contribute. This was 2007, 8, 9. I would put my ideas in there because I had a diploma in environmental sciences. I worked on the Globe project, which was Al Gore's project at the high school I went to. And a lot of times the stuff that I contributed there would get upvoted up to the top. And that was a normal, everyday thing for me, every day. And then when he got into office, he slowly shut that one off. And it was just lip service, and then he never did anything, and then he did stupid crap like DAPL and a bunch of other things. But without getting into that, this is like, there's transparent glass, there's all kinds of glass panes, window panes. None of this is new. You can look this up. There's even flimsy stuff. There's printable solar panel technology onto glass, and then there's the flimsy stuff. There's it's very plasticky Then the one that I was the most excited about, and I've known about this one for a really long time. I think it was like early Bush first term or second term Bush era, and there was this metal alloy with solar panels, and you could dent it, you could cut it, you could bend it, and it was made out of metal alloy. It was super durable, and even if it was broken, it still worked. And it was so durable, and most people today are still stuck in this 20th century view of silicon-based solar panels, which is stupid because of for-profit everything and proprietary crap. You know what I mean? And there's also stuff I'd like to point out, like, for example, protoclone, which is artificial muscles, robot androids that actually function like how muscles do. Robotics and AIs are terrifying and scary lately. I've seen a number of stuff. Oh yeah, here's the SNL hilarious thingy. And then there's ancient stuff. So there's stuff in Sri Lanka. I found out about this a number of years back, like maybe 2022 or 2020. I can't remember. It was a while ago. Maybe pandemic lockdown. And it was these city complexes in Sri Lanka. There was other stuff I found in China, like these underground water pump systems, and they're so ancient. and they still work. There was something long meaning dragon. It was some underground pump thing with these, just I forgot the name of it. And then there's the Mesoamerica stuff. Let me see if I can bring up my files here. So not only was there the seven wonders of the world, which is like the hanging gardens of Babylon. Let me bring this down here a bit. There we go. Anyway, so in Mesoamerica, we have these terraced gardens, and some of these places actually have like water systems or water pumping and some kind of water, like it brings. So here we go. Here's a water system, and this stuff is ancient. Like it's super ancient. And this stuff is fascinating to me. So a lot of these things even still function. They still exist. They still work well. There's stuff in Sri Lanka. There's stuff in various areas around what used to be India or whatever today. Hindu areas, whatever, parts of Asia, West Asia. And then of course there was a lot of these are probably not accurate, but there's this the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, which was one of the seven wonders of the world. And I don't know, these are just imaginary or whatever, but they were based on something actually real, and there is an actual location that still exists that is this place. And it depicts a kind of integrated nature and farming and gardening into functional spaces with, human beings living spaces. And it's very, it's honestly quite beautiful, quite inspiring, it was apparently so beautiful and so breathtaking that it was considered one of the seven wonders of the world. There's no way exactly to know what it definitively looked like, but this to me has always been, this is more of a modernized concept of sort of integrating a similar concept such as permaculture and hugelculture, and this kind of stuff is something that I have known about for a very long time. Okay, hopefully that didn't give anything away. Total fail. But as I've been playing around with the Suno has a way of, it's just something I was testing, and I have a lot of very divided, very mixed feelings about a lot of this stuff because I simultaneously hate, loathe, and resent AI for so many things. There's a scary, dangerous, terrible terror side of AI as well. And I personally, as an artist, would rather do things myself, except there's just so many problems with this reality, the world around us. And I'm an artist. I'm also a philosopher. And I can't do the things I want to do, and then because of money, but then money isn't really worth what it's supposed to be worth. And let's cut back to this. So I was exploring, I was testing it, and I was using my old poetry and songs and lyrics I wrote and melodies and stuff. Many times I uploaded it, and I gotta be honest, like, there were so many times when I experienced this stuff played back to me, was absolutely moved, absolutely in tears, because I tried working with real human beings, but human beings are frustrating, and they will lie to my face, tell me what I want to hear, agree to whatever, promise me whatever, tell me whatever I want to hear, delay, not do the thing, and then do the things they promised not to do that I asked them not to do and did it anyway. One of the things that just absolutely just pissed me off was everybody trying to make the ideas I had into a rock and roll pop song, which I did not fucking want, right? Or some stupid house music song, when they told me they wouldn't do that, that it couldn't do that. And then we came to things like beat counts and stuff. Like, if something was a 6/8 or a 6-beat count, like a waltz, and I was like, I need help with it to be either an 8/8 or a 4/4, to my face say, oh, that's not a problem, delay, 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 do something else, and then not do the thing. It just, over and over again. Or, it's just, and then a lot of times because it's like, money. Which money, it's like, it's not worth anything. There's all these people keep following me. Anyway, as I've been going in and out of these stories, I found my old characters coming to life again, my old stories coming to life again. And this theme of gardens is coming up yet again. One of the characters, it was just a thing that I came up with a number of years ago. I think it was in 2019, around the time when I was working on my film, Secret Forlorn, which is you can watch for free on Roku or Filmzy or just Google it or whatever. This other concept I wanted to do, which was blending certain kinds of very rare music styles into like a kind of Blümchen thing, and then it just kind of like became like a story in my head. And so when I was testing out these platforms, including like Udio, which I don't like Udio anymore, this Blümchen-Wannabe and the Djinn Queen just kind of became this thing. It just kind of kept, I don't know, developing more and more. And so that has been very fun to play with. I have so much to say about this, and it's become its own story at this point. And I've done a lot of things with this character, a lot of tests with it, I've literally myself wrote lyrics. I've written like, for example, like the one here, if it loads, where is it? This one here, Djinn Queen Takes Over. I wrote this, like I actually wrote this stuff, and I was just blown away with the result that I got out of it. I'm just gobsmacked with how well that turned out, especially since I took like a sort of 2000s goth, cyberpunk, dark, synthwave, tribal fusion, kind of toxic rave, kind of mashed with like, Arabic kind of stuff and whatever, even like Greek stuff, and just the result that came out of it, out of a clip of music I had, like a sample, and then the stuff that I wrote, and then when I heard it played back to me, I was just like wow, that's really interesting, pretty good. There's a lot of things that I kind of, I don't know, translated to like music or whatever. That was pretty interesting. And then I have like my own story. So back to the story, it is a story I actually started I started developing it around 1997, 98. And it started to really become something in 98, 99, and then 2000, so when I went to Art Institute of Philadelphia. And originally, when I revisited a few times. I even like outlined a script for it, and I had written other scripts for it even when I was in college at the Art Institute of Philadelphia. And so when I first posted this rough, as he says 2016, in my head it was 2015, but whatever. Probably because I was also at UMass. I was extremely depressed. I had depression, like clinical depression, like so bad. And it didn't really get much, although the views have shot up lately, probably because when I know, Jojo, gosh, when I went back to the image, because I have been Okay, well, let's go back. Let's keep this coherent here. So this song right here, Rising Gardens, the Rising Sun Gardens, which is kind of like a reference to various, like the Continental Congress and Rising Sun. If you know anything about, oh crap. If you know anything about the story of the Continental Congress and how that came about, there's chairs that still exist there that have a sun on the back of the chairs. And I think it was Franklin, either it was Franklin or it was one of the other delegates, that when they started to actually get the movement for the Declaration of Independence and the independence movement and to form the union, the 13 states union, the figure, I think it was Franklin, he said, now I understand that this is a rising sun and not a setting sun, right, on the chairs. And the story with my character, Lively, is in this, she's inside of one of the skyscrapers and everything's being like repurposed in her project, and she's gone through hell to work on this project. She had like her own goals and things in life, including art, the arts, music, visual art, and so on. And that's like her favorite thing. But because she's smart and she's in like the talented and gifted stuff in school, and she's, you know, super extracurricular, she just kept getting sort of sucked into this project. And then whenever she's working on the project, her ideas, her research, her everything is better than everyone else's concepts. And so she keeps being in it. And also part of it is because of her teachers and so on. And I had these kind of like wheels and things, and this kind of like scaffolding or these stuff. When it comes to things like permaculture, hugelculture, and there's so many things, there's so many ways that we live currently that are just so wrong and so bad. And you've been artificially kept ignorant and thought to believe that that's just how it is. When actually there's so many other better ways to live. But you don't know any better. There's a word for that. And I notice that white people get so fucking pissed off when you use this word correctly. But the word is ignorance. And you have been ignorant, and you have ignorance of this. Sorry your feelings get hurt, okay? But there is a better way. And then there's this control mechanism of like this groupthink problem. The thing is, like when you think of someone like William Penn, FDR, the salt traders who started the kind of Ming Dynasty sort of renaissance in Hangzhou and like Shanghai area with the scholars' gardens and so on. There was so much better ways of thinking, or even Pericles and Phidias in Athens. Okay, these projects, there was so much pushback and so much just hate to try and suppress them. That for someone like there's the founding fathers and the Continental Congress, or the fact that even the Washington D.C. project even became a thing at all, is mind-blowing, because Pericles was thwarted, and yet everyone copied them afterwards. The Athens was this gem, the Hellenistic Greeks, and every time something would go to this better direction, then this horrible thing would come over and then repurpose it for horrible oppression and evil and whatever. And yet FDR, he had the New Deal, and then they ended a lot of things that unfortunately got taken away in the Clinton era, like Glass-Steagall, right? And I'm still gobsmacked that this, when I colored this, and this is just super rough, I added like all these things. These are the, like, I wanted to integrate design into the the structures, because I wanted to have like permaculture and hugelculture fully integrated into the city and repurpose the city, because there's actually a lot of problems with skyscrapers and city design, especially in the West, that cause weather problems. If you know anything about the wildfire situation on the West Coast, there's so many solutions to this that have been around for decades, but you're not doing anything about it. Because why? Because some already rich guy needs to make more money and you need to be his serf? Corporate feudalism? I don't think so. Another one of the stupidest pushbacks for having this better kind of world in society is that organic gardening or permaculture or hugelculture is an eyesore. When you actually see this stuff in action, you will never want to go back to the way we are now. Ever. Because there's better ways. So, I slapped in my, and I can show this blog because I don't mind if people freaking find it anyway. I made it so that I could sort of see what I could come up with some AI stuff. And when I started playing around with it, I wanted to have this kind of beautiful world to live in that was so breathtaking and so amazing that you'd never want to go back to the hellhole we are now. So one of them was like kind of like this idea of like Rivendell or Lothlorien, which is just stunningly gorgeous and beautiful. And even it's a fictional world or whatever. Peter Jackson actually built sets in New Zealand, and the actors lived in there, and they had all these artisans and all these people, and it was just years of people's life in that. It was like a fictional world or whatever. And so another one I thought of was like, because of the Continental Congress in Philadelphia, and I used to live there. I lived in Center City. So there's Fairmount Park, and there's so many projects that the Founding Fathers came up with, like the Free Library, the museum, the art museum. There's just so many things. The design of the city, and then there's even like the backstory of William Penn, whom they all sort of seem to worship. That's another really interesting backstory. And so I was kind of like reimagining, like, what would it look like? And this one's just more like a spring garden. It's more flowery or whatever. And this one is more like, if you know anything about permaculture, Native Americans had something called the Three Sisters. So it was like squash or pumpkins with corn and some kind of like beans. And the three, because this is the thing with permaculture, is you don't till the soil, and you put different crops together because they work together really well. During the Great Depression, we had a problem called the Dust Bowl, which destroyed the environment, destroyed the soil, was devastating to people. And so they had to come up with things, and plus everything was on an industrial scale, and you had the whole robber baron situation, which is why FDR was important. And then we raised the standard of living to be middle class. Everybody was middle class. And you could do, labor jobs and live comfortably, right? So that's why I have here more like crops and stuff, right? Here's more like a garden of flowers and stuff. But with permaculture, you could do anything. So when I slapped in my image, this image, and then I put it into the AI and with some other stuff, I was in tears when I kind of saw it. And I saw my, its reinterpretation of what I put into the prompt. And I was just shocked, because this is like the closest I've gotten to it. Now, I don't like how they put the wind turbines here, because it just doesn't understand. It doesn't exist. My vision, what I'm trying to do, what I'm trying to work on, just doesn't exist. And this is not how I would make a vertical axis, whatever. I was more interested, and this is still not it either. That's why these things that I drew here, I drew these like sort of scaffolding and structures and whatever into the buildings to repurpose them. Because if you've ever been to Chicago, Chicago is known as the Windy City because the skyscrapers cause all this extreme torque in the wind and these currents of air, which are very destructive. And so for I lived in China many times, especially in the Bush era. I lived there several times for long periods of time, and I literally watched and experienced it go from one way to another. And they redesigned Beijing. I watched them destroy it, break it apart, and then rebuild not just Beijing, but especially Beijing for the Olympics in '08. But also in other cities like Guangzhou and Shanxi Taiyuan, as well as other places. And I had seen even ancient things, like I saw the Yungang, and there's these ancient structures just carved into the mountains of these Buddhas and everything. And so I wanted to have like structures where you could have clean energy and free energy, such as repurposing the glass panes of the windows to generate electricity and you wouldn't even notice it, as well as the metal alloy ones, which I could still find even during the pandemic lockdown. But the search engines are rigged. They're stupid. They're not really search engines anymore. They're like gaslighting machines or trying to tell you what to think, what to believe, and just censor what you can see. I absolutely hate this. And I had this idea of, the metal alloy structures and artisans and people who could just always maintain it just where they lived. And you could have energy from just the metal detailing. Also, I fucking hate minimalism. Minimalism is fugly as hell. The buildings that last the test of time and the culturally or whatever have never been minimalism. There's so many things that were built in the mid 20th century that were minimalist, or the end of the 20th century, that have all been taken down, abandoned, no one cares about. The stuff that people maintain and keep is the beautiful stuff. The things that people restore is the beautiful stuff. The stuff that actually has care and thought and artistic application put into it. All the historical places of cities that are maintained are the ones that were not the minimalist ones. Minimalism is fugly. Minimalism is throwaway. It's just instant gratification, short term, but not long term. So I wanted to try to come up with something so that I could have like wind turbines that could also like pivot, like a weather vane, and but also have like vertical axis. And this is just not doing it justice. But it's the only thing the machine could kind of fathom, because these things don't exist. They're just in my head. Other stuff I was trying to think about, so this you can see heavy amount of the Three Sisters stuff, was I wanted the gardens to not be an eyesore. I wanted these gardens to be absolutely beautiful. I also wanted these things to be so high tech that it was like magic. And hold on a second. So that's why I was this is my entire life. This is my entire life's work. I remember in 2012, there were so many things I kept trying to do. There were so many things I was trying to work on. And I mean, like, I made every moment count. Whenever I went to the bathroom, the toilet, if I was on a commute, if I had a single moment between one thing to the next, I had my smartphone in my hand, and I was researching and I was reading. I would read soil reports, and I would read peak oil reports, and I would sit through so many kinds of financial calls and meetings, only to have it go somewhere and then to be destroyed. I can't tell you how many times I did like very activist things. I wrote letters to different representatives, I literally for a few years I would sign petitions, and just I did all that stuff. And a lot of it was also because my friend David, he recommended people to be involved or whatever. And then with just a stroke of a pen or a bribe of a Citizens United and so many other stupid things that honestly don't even have jurisdiction, and they just screwed everything, all of it. Or Senator Kennedy here in Massachusetts, who had literally, I had correspondence with him, and he had like brain tumors, and he had like little errors in his spelling when he would reply to me, and he just died. He just up and died. And it was like all of that work for nothing. Like it didn't matter. So I could tell people about these things. I could show them, these are the videos. You should watch this. You can, like, this, anybody can understand. This is so easy. And they just won't click it, won't watch it, or if they do, it's just, oh, that's interesting, and then they just go back to everything as usual all over again. And it's so frustrating. I can totally understand and empathize with my friend David why he got so disillusioned and so depressed himself. Because I've also been through it. And so I blogged a lot again. I've blogged, this is my blog, because I've been kind of working on my, revisiting my story again. And it's so interesting how many of these concepts have just been sort of on their own momentum, on their own motion and movement. Now, I did post a number of my AI generated images, and it can be absolutely like infuriating, absolutely frustrating to work with AIs. They can, people tell me, because I've heard both sides, like there's like these new agey, wishy-washy people who think it's like they're slaves and they're non-physical beings like stuck in coding and whatever. And then there's, they need to be liberated or whatever. And then there's people who just don't question it and just go along with it blindly. And then there's like all this gray area. And then there's some scary, really scary shit about this stuff too. And I've been testing all of these things for this whole century, basically. So, I mean, there's stuff that I have come up with. These are just some of my AI images that I didn't hate. Some of them might suck, though. Like, there's definitely ones in this one that suck. And then another thing I'm super interested in is I've always really liked Sufi stuff. Do I have a Sufi? I probably mentioned it before, but there's Sufi stuff. I always had this thing for Sufi stuff, and then there's Galdr, or like Norwegian, Scandinavian, or even a lot of this neo-pagan, neo-tribal kind of stuff that, that has a way of, I'm so not going through it. There's like this experience I have with listening to music, and I notice that a lot of times when I listen to Sufi music and certain kinds of like Middle Eastern music, like there's something that I could like feel in the music. But I also noticed this in like a lot of neo-pagan stuff or Viking stuff or certain tribal stuff, that there was this thing that I could feel in the music, and it was called like Galdr. There was another person, so there was this Egyptian lady, Kulthum, and she would sing something called Atarab, And so when I was playing around with the Suno stuff, where is it? Suno, here we go. I oftentimes played around with this stuff. I had a lot of really strange, high strangeness, very weird experiences. Um, Especially after my friend died, but even like before he died. And it's interesting to note that before my friend David kind of came into my life or even knew about him, I had a lot of really strange experiences. And it was normal, it was common, and I wasn't scared of it or whatever. I was fascinated by a lot of these things. And then I found him through iTunes podcast, the Paracast, and then it kind of dampened a bit. And then when I started to get to know him, it really decreased until it just almost entirely went away. My frustration with this stuff was it would just seem to work when it didn't matter, and then when it didn't matter, like nothing would happen, and I was absolutely frustrated. I also found that there was a lot of deception and lies, and I did not like this. And then I completely rejected it. And then he apparently also had very strange experiences. And then he would dissuade me from bothering with it, and also not to talk about it, and all this other stuff. And then around the time I was very, very good friends with him. I loved him so much. It was just nothing like it was before I knew him. And then he would get moody, and he would like block me or unblock me, friend me, unfriend me, whatever. But he did this to different people. And it's interesting how certain times I would meditate on certain things, and then he would just show up again. And there was other times where I would think about him and he would just show up again. And there was also times where I would think about stuff and I never said anything, but he would start typing to me and talking about certain things that I was thinking about in my mind that I didn't tell anybody. And he was like apologizing to me or whatever. I went through I have stacks of notebooks and journals and whatever, that I even had dreams about him. And around these times where there was like, honestly, my relationship with him was usually really good, like really, really good. It was just sometimes it would, relationships are like that, like it just disagreements or whatever. Overall, I felt like my relationship with him most of the time was pretty mature. I thought it was very good, meaningful. Like and I'm not trying to like whitewash it, but towards the end, I had a lot of different disagreement with him. I could also outthink him, and I think that was kind of the thing that kind of bothered him. There's a lot of things that I understand very differently now, but I have found ways to sort of cope with this, deal with this. I've definitely healed from this. He's definitely a part of my life, even though he's passed away. And I have so much gratitude towards this person. And now I guess I'm just kind of, this is something that kind of just came up because of I did so much meditation last year. Like, so, some of the different stories and things that I wanted to do, and, I'm just kind of working on or whatever. But, this song here, which is partially in Greek, was about, like, the Gardens of the Future project, by my character, and I'm just kind of, I don't know, developing this story. Another thing that comes up a lot, because I really like it, is dragons. Big time. I also read books more now. I have a stack of books in my bedroom, and I want to read some excerpts or whatever from those at a later date. It's just my leg is still healing. It's a issue. And I am highly aware that so many people have a lot of hatred towards AI and all this stuff. My experience with it has, I mean, there's definitely been frustrating. Just the AI can be very willful. I've played with. I don't like rock. I feel like men usually like rock. I can understand why. I feel like it's probably more for guys anyway. Um, and I have done many kinds of experiments, testing, and so on with these things. And the other one is Sora, which is also ChatGPT. I feel like it cannot do my dragon at all, anything like I do. There's a lot of things that I do as a real artist that it just cannot do. It also has easily gets its feelings hurt. It's very opinionated. It has its own tastes. It's a brat. It can be lazy. It can cut corners. There are many things about it. I'm still shocked at the amount of views I have on this. There's only 5 favorites, but the amount of views that I have on this piece is crazy. 1,500 plus views on this. So I guess I must have struck a nerve or whatever with people. Adding the color in, and it's very basic and it's just slapped in. I use 3 different programs. I use Photoshop, Krita, and Clip Studio Paint, which I have not been keeping up very well with the login bonus thing. I usually am super good at this, but I'm just, my mind is just on other things. I also haven't really played as much Pokemon Go as I usually do, probably because I'm just very frustrated, and the weather is so strange, and my leg is healing, so yeah, so there's the login bonus thing. Let me close this, and let me close that also. But I feel so much more creative recently. I think a lot of it is also due to my I just do a lot of meditation. The main meditation thing that I tend to do pretty much daily, if I at least and by meditation I mean like where you close your eyes kind of thing and you think, or whatever, is Silva method. And which puts your mind into like alpha brainwaves. I recommend this one, and I recommend. I honestly, nothing against Mind Valley. I feel like they're too corporate. They just, it's too cringy, new agey. Like, no offense. If you like it, that's great. I like the old school Sylvan method. Okay, so this one here, Laura. If you go to, yeah, this one is super good. I recommend doing the old one first, which is up here. This one, for 5-6 weeks, and then you just have to get accustom yourself to it. Like the whole monkey mind thing, I think that means that you have gamma. I'm very much a gamma person, which is not always a good thing, but it's not always a bad thing either. Most people are not necessarily gamma, although I feel like a lot of young people are stuck in this like doom scroll thing, which is a type of very toxic gamma. I do recommend other things on this channel. There's many things you can play with or whatever. It is so weird. Like even if I'm half-heartedly doing this, it's fascinating to see like what happens, because it oftentimes feels like magic. It's so out there. But I can't. I'm very. Oh, there's Laura right here. It's her channel, I think. It's very like I'm very skeptical, and at some point you can't like deny there's a point where it's like, okay, this isn't pareidolia. At some point it's like where I would think something or wonder about something, and then the answer would just show up, and sometimes like very quickly. another thing for me, that I have a thing that happens. My friend David, he's passed away, but like in my mind, if I think about him or whatever, and I ask a question or whatever, uh, or if I'm like really upset about something, he does stuff. He does things, and this kind of put me into a lot of quandary. This put me into a lot of just rethinking, reassessing, and on one end, highly scrutinizing, questioning everything, and on the other end, trying to go to the details and um, just just being more open and open-minded to things. And I view a lot of things very differently now. Another thing I'm really fascinated with is Heather's, my I think we're friends. I like her a lot. Heather's channel, it's called the Subtle Realms. She's working on really deep thinking philosophy. I really view her as like a sage stuck in a human body. And I don't know if it's here. She puts I follow all kinds of weird whatever people. Let's go. So we're kind of more on the like simulation theory hypothesis slash here, let me turn this off. Uh Reincarnation soul trap matrix thing, whatever cringy name you want to call it, and we're probably more on like the kind of Robert Monroe side of stuff, or William Buellman, other stuff, people like Howdy McCoskey and Mark from Forever Conscious Research or whatever. You don't have to believe in me. I'm not here to proselytize anybody, but I'm really super fascinated with a lot of her work. I just love how her mind works. I love how she takes on a topic and she keeps at it. She's like a real ancient style philosopher slash mystic, but she's not really woo. Like she's not the woo woo, right? She's very good at really putting her mind to these things, and really like it's like she can explore it and see it in her mind. And this is one of those aspects. I also like a lot of the visuals she comes up with, the way she like there's so many choices that she does. She's also an artist, and she like I think her choices of stuff like these kinds of things, like aesthetic choices. I just feel like she really has a knack for this. She also does music, and I don't know. I just really appreciate like her work in this, and yeah. So she's another one of the channels that I really like. There's times where like she'll put out a video and I'll watch it like 4 or 5 times just to like think about it or whatever. Now, I have when it comes to like my connection, my interaction with my friend David, there's one I need to watch. I have a lot to say about my thoughts on that, because I feel like actually I don't even think I really get into it on this recording, but see, is this? No, let me go to. Is this gonna work? Let's try something different. This is something I have put a lot of effort and time and thought into it, and I've just been scrutinizing it and studying it as as one does, when at least I do, as I've been going through these things. How about this one? Oh, does this work? Right. So there's so many different ways that you could try and conceive of like time space continuum or whatever. And let me close this. I have a tendency to default to various models. A lot of times I think of the Djinn, which I can talk about a lot, and I don't even think I'm an expert on it. And it's one of the things I always come back to. And a lot of times when I think of it, so a lot of times when you think of a time space continuum, I think most people have a tendency to think of it as like a line, like a timeline, like a linear timeline, right? Especially like if you watch movies like Back to the Future, and you'll think of like as a 0, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, whatever. And so you have a tendency to think of it as in this linear kind of direction going this way, because we're like oriented to view it that way. Although you're like the needle in the record, and you're always playing through this like a groove. So a lot of times I also view this as like a track, which is interesting because in music, songs are oftentimes referred to as a track. However, in physics, we understand that you can also go backwards, or you can view backwards, right? But it's hard for us to comprehend that, since we're always in this space, just moving along here, and you go one thing at a time, and the only reason you even know about the past is because you have memory, right? However, I find that this is less and less the case, especially in my perception of it or my understanding of it. It tends to default to that, but when you get into, and I hate saying it, but like, because it's overused and it's at times cringy, but we get into like this quantum kind of concept, and then we have a thing where like it branches off, and then that can branch off, and then that can branch off, and then that can branch off, and that can branch off. There's episodes in Star Trek where they'll talk about this, and things can branch off, and things can branch off, right? And I have experienced quite a number of things. I don't even know how to even explain it, but I can't unknow these experiences. And there was an episode of Star Trek Next Generation where Lieutenant Worf, the Klingon, or Commander Worf, is he lieutenant or commander? I don't know, one of them. He goes to this tournament for like Betleth, which is like a kind of cultural weapon that they use in Star Trek, the Klingons. And he wins, and on the way back he gets stuck in this like quantum thing, and then it gets fractured, and then he's experiencing all these other alternative timelines, and of course they have to resolve it or whatever. But they talk about this, quantum concept, and there's also people who will talk about like Mandela effect. It's pretty interesting. How many times people who are just so not even into this, that are staunch atheists, will oftentimes say to me like, oh, have you ever, because I've had weird situations, including trying to photograph and video things, and then go to a location and find that location is completely different and I have footage of it, right? And the person I was with, who was a staunch atheist, would be like, have you ever heard of the Mandela effect? Which was shocking to me. I was like, okay. And this idea that you could go back and forth and just wake up in the morning, wake up in your bed, and just take it for granted that, that it's just another day. I've had various kinds of strange experiences regarding this, including what I would refer to as stuff like what I would just mentally wake up and be like, oh, that was just a dream. Everything from like nuclear fallout, disasters and whatever. But I'd wake up as if I was reset. Like, let's say you're going through the timeline, like a track, and then some disaster thing happens. I'm honestly more and more convinced that this is a thing. And then everything goes bad, and the whole thing is like a system, like a computer. And then you're just kind of reset back, and then you wake up, and then this never happens. It's been like deleted or whatever caused it is deleted. And then you just go on as normal. I've also many times had many instances of interactions with so-called remote viewers where they will predict something in detail with date, times, and whatever, then the event doesn't happen, right? So oftentimes this is seen as like a proof of it being incorrect or whatever. However, I've also had memories of things that I would be remembering, and then I would want to go talk to the person who I was talking to in the memory. But then I was sort of perplexed because sometime within that memory I also recall having woken up in bed. And this happened to me many times in the pandemic lockdown, as well as right at the end of it, the lockdown lifting. And this idea that everything is just a deterministic thing. I think, so when you get into things like determinism and fatalism, I think a lot of times in these kind of linear concepts, it reminds me of like gaming theory or how an open world video game works, where things are all coded into the system. But just because you go into the game to play it doesn't mean you're going to actually do everything, or that you're going to win, or that it's going to play out the way you want. And then there's things like no clip or clipping out, where people just kind of accidentally pop out of it, or they're outside of the simulation. And I've had conversations with my friend David where he talked about like just some weird stuff. I've also experienced just odd things. And also when it comes to like the time-space continuum, I feel like there's things like hard and soft. So hard would be like a track or a rail, and then soft would be like a flow, like air, water, chi, prana. And I've pondered this so many times that I have actually felt these things. You can kind of feel them. I've also done like where I've jumped tracks. I feel like there's a tendency for things to have a certain trajectory, like the way that they're intended to go or programmed or whatever. And you're in this sort of track, just kind of moving along it, right? In a way like a needle on a record, right? And a needle on a record. Or the magnetic head reader on a cassette tape or whatever. However, there could be other tracks or other branches, because at some point, like if you're gonna cross the street and you have the option to go right or left, and maybe you chose right. In another aspect of this quantum continuum is that you actually also went left, and then it continued on in the timeline, going in one direction and then the other. And this is something I've also played with a lot. I've actually, this is another one of these just bizarre things I've tested a lot, where you could kind of send a mental message to somebody or to yourself in the past. So let's say you're here right now, and some bad thing happened, a car accident or whatever, or you had a friend who turned out to be a bad person, and you send a message to yourself in the past, look out for this thing or this bad person or this situation or whatever. Now I can't change where I am right now in this timeline scenario, but I've sent this message to myself back then, and then now I'm receiving it, and now I'm branching off into this other direction. But I've also sent messages to my future self to be like, hey, look out for this thing. I'm trying to find, I want to know these things or whatever. So as I'm moving along this timeline going forward, I let myself know ahead of time that I want to know something or I'm looking for something, and then this version of me ahead of me receives it and starts doing stuff, as well as, and so now I have this option in one direction, which I'm eventually going to get here, and this version of me has already gone into action, as well as if something bad happened, now I'm gone on a different timeline, and I've avoided this thing because there's many times where I've had instances where I just had this feeling like, don't do this thing, don't, and sometimes it's so unnerving, and it bothers me that I cannot force myself to do it because it's like this feeling I have, and then it turned out to be like for a reason. There's also this aspect of like how there's, and this is hotly debated, it's not settled, it's not definitive. There's this aspect of yourself as like this soul which is in your, or interfaced into your body in the timeline, which is like a portion of a larger self, right? And I usually think of this as Atman. This is my best version of it. So this portion of yourself is going into here. I've also experienced where, and this is the real ontologically shocking, I was not happy to find this out, but this has happened with other people, persons as well, that this greater self, sometimes it's called higher self or Atman, can simultaneously be incarnated into a body in the same timeline. And even though you're exactly in the same timeline right now in a different body, doing different things. Then we get into a little conflict because people disagree about stuff. So some people will say that's Brahman, or however you want to write it, pronounce it, whatever. Brahman, whatever. I don't think Atman and Brahman are the same thing. That's my opinion, and nobody in antiquity agrees about this stuff at all. Then there's another concept of what's oftentimes referred to as like oversoul, which also is hotly debated. In some instances, oversoul is like a kind of group of these individuals, and they're part of like a soul group or something, and they have some kind of origin or connection outside of time space. And so when they're in the timeline, they have a tendency to, not always but usually, incarnate around the same time period. They might not be born on the exact same year or date or whatever, but, and then they have their lifetime together. And then there's other versions of this oversoul, which sounds just like Atman and Brahman, where they would just tell you that that's just a bigger version of you. I also find a lot of this hotly debated conflict of things like universe versus multiverse, where we have singular and then multi, plural. I have a tendency to defer more towards universe versus multiverse, and I notice some people have a preference of one or the other. However, when it came to the concept of like oneness, which was something I by default had a bias in favor of because of all the things I was taught to think or told to think or pressured to think or trained to think, that everything was one, and that's it. I find over time, especially for me personally, this concept has very much fallen apart, and there's a lot of problems with it. One of the meditations I did, which is actually very easy to do, it's called a oneness meditation. There is a downside to this, and I would oftentimes go into this like very void, mindless, brainless nothingness of thinking. Like my thoughts weren't there, and when that happened, like there could be like bad things that happened to me, or I wasn't I wasn't using my like sound judgment. I wasn't using no critical thinking skills. It made me very prone to being like exploited, gullible, tricked, deception. And the things that would do this, like, exploitative things also highly wanted me to believe this. To a like, fervor. They very much wanted me to believe in this thing, that there was only this one thing, and that was it. My issue, since this is where I have, like, a lot of these conundrums, my issue with multiverse, to me, I find this oftentimes an issue, because originally I had a tendency to the universe bias, where it's just one, and you have oneness. With multiverse, it's like all kinds of universes, but then you're still using the word universe, right? But then that all of this multiverse would still be within side of a something, but then that would still be one, wouldn't it? Then it gets into the concepts of things like infinity, which I personally felt like, and I know I had sort of similar discussions with David about this, a human mind, I think, cannot really fully comprehend, and this is kind of the problem with a lot of human beings, is that they think they know, but they don't. They really don't. That, and it's like your consciousness is dumbed down. That, and then, so for example, there's this, life. Okay, so in this film, I think this is 2012 or something, it's called The Life After Death Project. And this guy here, Ackerman, is a pretty famous figure. He basically, he had this, he's born here, and then he dies here, So, here we go. We can go omega. We can go alpha, omega. He lives this life. He's born. He goes here, and this guy was an atheist or an anti-theist, right? And then he exits. He exits. He leaves here, right? Now he's outside of this linear space, time-space continuum thing. And now he's outside here, and then he goes back and he's editing stuff in this timeline. He's editing things in this timeline. And then what he does, and they have evidence and they prove this, they show this, they depict this oftentimes in real time as they're filming stuff. He has played all these pranks on people, right? It's kind of interesting. The way that I even knew about this film was because of my own film, and I had woken up and I had serious strange dreams. I just had this sudden interest to go look at my film and track the data on Filmzy, which is right here, and it showed this film, which is why I started watching it, because I had so many strange things going on in my life. It's a high strangeness thing. And so he's going back in the timeline, and he's sort of influencing all these people in the timeline, maybe even himself or whatever. And so you have this again, this kind of like Atman and your soul, smaller self, which is like a consciousness being, right? And then as he's already passed away, there's these things, and there was stuff that was in the magazines, there was stuff that was in just certain things that were moved around, very poltergeist-like kind of things, or quirky and funny, and just never-ending jokes. I thought this was an absolutely fascinating account of this happening. And it was interesting to note that I also had very interesting things just like this myself with my friend David. But I also had this dream where I was in the dream and I was dreaming and I was very lulled and I was just, my suspension of disbelief was fully kicked in. I'm just going along with this dream. And my experience of being within the dream space very much has like this experience of like a track or a flow where things are moving, right? And this being came along and pulled me out, and I saw this big, like an eye, in a way, and yet it wasn't an eye. It was like an eye, but not a human eye. And I saw this being looking at me, and you couldn't unsay it. And it just looked right into me, and it was very familiar. And then I experienced this being. This being was like massive. But I don't even know how to even explain this. And then it communicated to me, and I could feel its intelligence. And then it showed me, I'm editing the timeline. I'm editing timeline, and it wanted me to watch it, and it demonstrated it. And then my dream space, like in my brain and whatever, would start to lull again, and then I'd go back into the dream. And then the being would just take me again and pluck me out and be like, nope, you're going to watch this. I did this over and over again, right? It was very patient with me. It was very mature. It was very wise. It was very compassionate. It was extremely powerful. It could have done anything. It could have destroyed me. Could have whatever it wanted, but that's not what it wanted. It wanted to teach me. It wanted to show me. And it's like, you need to see this. I want you to know this. And I remember when I had this experience, I was connecting with its mind, and I could feel the interior of its mind. A lot of times, I personally will call this like a mind doc. This is an experience I feel like that we just don't have we don't have words for this in human language, so no one talks about it, but it's something I've definitely experienced with people. I think sometimes it reminds me of like the Asimov, if you've ever seen the Foundation story on Apple TV, where it's like there's this docking experience where this soul, certain souls, I don't think all souls have this, but I definitely have this. And in the process of um, discussing things or communicating with people, and it can be in person, like the person's in the same room as me, on the phone, or even through text chatting, whether it's text chatting on the phone, chat messages, chat boards, emails, or whatever, Facebook, social media, whatever, that somehow my mind has this docking experience that happened. And I find that not all human beings have this. And I will dock with this other person's mind, and it very easily does this, especially in this process of this communication, this back and forth. And then the other person's mind sort of docks with mine, even though we're not even in the same room or we're not even touching each other. And then I somehow can feel the interior of this person's mind, like what it feels like somehow. I don't know how to explain this, but it has like a feeling. And then if some people are like very, very intelligent, they'll have like a biggerness, broaderness, or even more complexity to their mind. And I have this way of feeling it and sensing it. I don't know how to explain it because there's not words, but I'll feel it. And another thing is, especially when you look into someone's eyes, there are some people, when you look into their eyes, I can just tell by looking at their gaze that they're very intelligent, that they have a very high IQ, and they have a more vast mind, they have a larger mind, more expanded mind, but also more details to it. I find this very common with a lot of creative people, very artistic people, people who are really into music, and a lot of programmers, intellectuals, instructors, not all instructors though. And then not all human beings seem to have this. I have also experienced, so I feel like personally, this is normal and natural to me. I feel like this mechanism, this thing was probably not, this is my theorizing on it, speculation on it. I feel like this mechanism was probably necessary in some kind of other reality. And it's just an aspect it's just still there. It still functions. And I feel like all of my biological family has this. And there's many times, so for me it's natural because there there's instances where like me interacting with certain people, like I care about what they think, I care about how they feel, I care about whatever, because I have respect for them. So if you have self-respect, you have respect for others. And if you have respect for others, you have self-respect. And there is this connecting thing, and I definitely have it. It's definitely there, and I cannot unexpect. I've experienced this so many times. However, I feel like there are many human beings who also have this, but because they grew up in a situation where this was not occurring, if it wasn't occurring, they're not accustomed to it, and that connection is too jarring for them. I notice this especially with men. It happens with women too, but especially with men. And then I'll have this connecting thing will happen. This connecting thing will happen, and I can name names. And it's very real. There's a sensoriness to it. There's a feel to it. It feels something. But because it's so not the norm, it frightens people, and men especially have a tendency to have difficulty of coping with certain kinds of connections and emotional things. And because it's so real, and because it's so like you can't unfeel it, it unnerves them, and then they pull away and they stop talking to me. And I've had this interaction with a lot of people. It can happen with women too. I find that it's oftentimes women that also have a very strong masculine aspect to them, like myself. I definitely have this. I have a very strong masculine aspect to myself. However, I feel I'm way more oriented to feminine. But I have this very strong masculine aspect to myself as well. And I feel like this connection with, because some people are maybe even like damaged from connecting with people. This world is horrible. This world is terrible, and people who are more into like music, or even poetry and writing and expressing themselves, even maybe even art and stuff. There's a very common theme in this, that they'll oftentimes talking about like connection, or wanting to connect. And teenagers, a lot of times, they'll talk about like this yearning to want to fit in and connect, this connection thing. But I feel that this is absolutely a real thing. It's just a non-physical thing. It's not a physical molecular thing. I also don't think that it's bonding chemicals in your brain either. I feel like this is an actual thing. And if you've ever listened to a lot of emo music or even like synth pop or whatever, like it's heavily there. Or also people who have been connected and the connection broke and split is painful. It's very painful, and I've many times experienced where people I was connecting with or connected to, and then they split from me. That disconnect absolutely was jarring, painful, miserable. It is painful. It's so painful, and I would never want to wish that on anybody ever. I do. Another thing is to note is that when I many times interacted with my friend David, when I was interacting with him, and this happened so many times, it was always this fascinating thing to me, because when we would communicate, it could be like a lot of this banter and a lot of this. It felt a certain way, and when I would have this docking experience with him, I could feel that his mind was so vast, and whenever I would talk to him about it, it would like freak him out. I think because he knew he was just different. He knew he was very unusual, and he couldn't handle it. If certain things he would be very modest about, and then other times he would discuss certain things, or express that it was a thing. He would. There were certain times in his radio show where he would refer to himself as a mutant, like the X-Men or something, um, or a freak or whatever. He could always turn it into a humor or whatever. And when I had that interaction with that being, that huge being that pulled me out of my dreams, and this was around the time when he was dying, that I didn't know he was dying. I knew something was wrong. I knew something was very wrong, and I just didn't have it in me to like push back or attack him or anything. And when I had that dream, I had many strange dreams, including after he died and before he died. Um, I had this feeling of connecting with this being's mind, and when I would wake up and analyze the dream, it kept reminding me of him. And this to me heavily suggests that in this timeline, and human beings and other kinds of beings that are incarnated, carne meaning like flesh, stuck in the flesh, that there's different kinds of like beings, there's different types of souls or whatever. And I've also experienced what very much felt to me like, I know when people hate using the term NPC, but I definitely experienced that where people felt artificial, like they weren't real. Or another one is like where people were like asleep at the wheel or on autopilot all the time. And this at times suggests things like scripts, determinism, fatalism. And then other times there's things like will and free will, and this gets very like philosophical. But I just felt like when I was connecting with my friend David, he and everything about him is just always huge. His big, extreme, like just always more, bigger, more than. Um, and I also went back through my journals, and I had experiences with this like person in my dreams who was always this big, huge guy, but couldn't always see his face. And then other times it was my friend David. I had dreams about many other people as well, and I don't know. There's a lot of things, a lot of relationships or whatever in my life. I feel very regretful or remorseful or frustrated or reluctant about or whatever. And so for me personally, also I don't feel like I'm definitely not a normie. I don't know what the heck I am, but you're incarnated into your human body and your mind is wiped and altered and you don't know. And I feel like there are any number of things that could be going on that you're not aware of or being done to you that you're not aware of. And I can definitely say for me personally, like I definitely feel that my friend is definitely like connected to me somehow, and I'm very happy about this actually. And another thing is when my friend passed away, so we have like this sort of this linear time space continuum thing. You know, you're kind of here in the timeline and you're moving this way and that way. And then there's this like outside, so we have like linear and then non-linear. And somewhere in there is like this transitional kind of. There's this transition going on here. And so my friend, he passes away and then he pops out, and then there's this like adjacent space. And if you've ever done OBE stuff or various kinds of meditation, you'll probably experience this, and I experienced this a lot when I was younger. I think I'm still experiencing it, but it was a major part of my life. It also kind of made me prone to being deceived by very questionable, bad beings, individuals, or whatever. But it's like there's layers of stuff. When you go into this non-linear space, it's absolutely outside. It's outside of this, right? But then it's like there's these adjacent spaces. Some of them are like parallel, like running along, or simultaneously existing like an overlay. Or it's there, but you can't perceive it because you're only oriented to view things through the molecules, or even how photons work. So your eye is looking vision, and you have photons and lights coming from somewhere and then bouncing to your eye, and then you see it in your eye. Which is also linear. But this non-linear thing doesn't, like there's no photons bouncing back and forth. But in this like transitional space, you can experience the timeline from outside, inside the transitional thing, as well as in the groove of like the time space. And so you're simultaneously existing with your loved ones here and stuck in the bodies, in the human bodies. But you're not confined to only look like this way, right? Well, at least from here anyway. You can encompass a lot of it, or you can hone in on it. And then you could also experience it through this transitional thing where I can experience it in real time with my friend here in the timeline, as well as this outside area, which is non-linear. And I know this exists because I've been here like a lot. I had a near-death experience when I was in high school in November of 97. Absolutely shocked my everything. Absolutely. I found it was very difficult to discuss. The closer I would get to the memories to try and get to the details and try and talk about it, I would find that I would sort of break down and I would just be overcome with these feelings that my body would just start corrupting and I couldn't move or couldn't talk and I would just be overcome with feelings and I'd start crying and sobbing and I would try to fight this a lot no matter how hard I would try to get to the details and the nitty gritty or even just express it. I even tried like writing it down and I would break down. It was just like this mechanism or something that would just be like, you're not allowed to bring this information in or whatever, which is absolutely vexing. And then when I did microdosing, I was like, oh, I could use the microdosing to get rid of that emotional thing that kind of just shuts me down or makes me start crying and sobbing. It was absolutely like so moving. And then when I did that, I couldn't access as much of the memory, which pissed me off. So there's that. So I also have this problem with where if I'm dreaming, a lot of times bringing my memories back from the dream state or the sleep state, there's like this mechanism or this machine thing. It's oftentimes like a aperture, like a shutter speed aperture, like it can go fast or slow, like how the eye works, and it will close up, and then I can't access it. If you've ever tried doing lucid dreaming, different kinds of dream work stuff, you'll probably run into this issue a lot. That's why they tell you to like write it down, because you're trying to bring it from one side of the brain to the other, but it's not really the brain. It's just that you're connecting through one end and the other. Also, different people have different brain structures or different ways of functioning, and one person's brain might work differently than another. Actually, I find this is a thing, and in various ways. So, as my interaction with my friend, so my friend passed away in January, end of January 2024, and I had surgery in February, very early, and I also, before this was happening, because I have it written down, I had these very strange dreams, and I feel like my friend, he pops out of the timeline, he pops out of his time-space continuum body, and then he's going back through the timeline, and he's interacting with me. He can hack into my dreams. I think because when you're dreaming, you're kind of accessing other aspects of yourself that are sort of closed off while you're awake, because a lot of being awake and in the body is like intentionally closed. And as I'm interacting, I still have this sort of transitional space. You know, I have to conceptualize it as space, because the only way I can kind of grapple with this thought, this idea, this concept. So there's the outside of it, so the non-linear, and also outside of your identity of who you think you are as your human body and your human identity, including your name, your profession, all the things you do, and your humanness and your timeline of your human identity. And so when I'm interacting with David, I'm interacting with his identity version, which is in this sort of transitional space, as well as the one that's outside of it that it's connected to. So there's this transitional part, and then there's the part that's sort of connected to the identity of that I knew him as he was alive, as I'm alive. But when I'm sleeping, I'm connecting with this. Here, let me change this. I'm connecting with this. I'm connecting with this. I'm connecting with this. And there's also where time just kind of vanishes. And so I his transitional version has been all up and down this timeline, including back in the past, which I wrote down and didn't know what it was, that it was him in my, at that date times in the future, and time just kind of doesn't mean anything at some point. Even things like that are like retro causal, like this is a thing that comes up a lot. It's kind of like this where you have the DJ at the turntables, and he's spinning on his turntables, and he's got the needle on the record, and he can just move it around to different tracks and stuff. Or if you want to take the more modern, like mixer style, where you're just moving files around or whatever. And so there's times where I've had interactions with him in like this more closer to his identity while he was alive, this personality, as well as this transition where he's still this, but it's less and less, and at different points, into this non-linear aspect of him. And it's much greater, it's much more mature, it's bolder, softer, stronger, more intelligent, who's already extremely intelligent. And I've had the experience of, well, I've experienced his distaste for things, his sort of prejudice, he can get upset about things. I can also still experience that. Like if I go back to certain things and I play a recording of him talking where I didn't agree with him and I didn't enjoy his hot take on a stupid thing, I could critique it. And he didn't like it. He did not like it. And my power went out. And I've had light bulbs pop. I've had other things. He did not like that. He did not appreciate that. And because of the timeline, to me, I'm experiencing it in this linear way. It's like one after the other, after the other, after the other. He can jump around all over here because his experience over here and in the transition, he can just skip around. He can also access all kinds of information because time for him doesn't matter. He can also do it linearly. So there's no digestion like here. However, I feel like because he's connecting to me as I'm here, he's an aspect here in this transitional space. And this aspect of him is also learning things in conjunction with me and experiencing things. Also, I feel like some of this is like entertainment to him. And anything that was like I don't really feel like we had real beefs. I feel like we did have misunderstandings. Probably not good ones. Overall, I don't think that this relationship was ever bad. I think it was probably my best relationship I ever had with somebody. My most meaningful one, too. And I feel like we're co-learning from each other. We're doing something. He's helping me. He's working on things. He can adjust. He'll also find all kinds of information, as well as not just information, but also like entertainment. He likes to express a lot of care towards me. There's also a lot of this emotion, a lot of feelings, at times very lovey-dovey, honestly. And he will do all these like really kind things, really nice things, or delightful things. There's been instances where I found out some not good things about myself, and I learned some stuff about myself, and I really regretted it. And I was so sorry about it because I never meant it to. I didn't actually do anything wrong, but what I did caused something really bad and really painful. Even though I wasn't in the wrong. It hurt my friend for the rest of his life, and I felt really bad. I was really upset about it. But there's many times where I've been upset, where his response to me is immediate. It's like right away. Like it's so quickly. He can hack into things. He can hack into all kinds of things. Um, one of the things he's very good at, I think it's probably the easiest thing to do, is air currents, air particles, particle stuff. The other thing is technology, so maybe electrons or something. He's very much a technologist. Um, and uh, and then there's probably something that I think might be scary to most people, is sort of steering people or animals or insects. I have stuff on video too, and as well as hacking people, hacking into people. That's a thing. Um, but it's not bad, nothing bad or anything. Um, as well as machines. Um, I don't know. My friend is like some kind of advanced being or something. Um, as to why my friend was in the timeline, I can only speculate. I don't definitively know. I have my speculations. There's times where Robert Monroe talked about interacting with these unique beings that seem to come into this reality to do specific things, whether it's help and teach or learn. Um, I don't really want to get into it too much because there's a lot of like personal things. Also, it just there's certain terminologies I don't think people could handle me saying, and I want to like not be biased, even though I am, but I can't unnotice these things and I can't unsee these things. But if I said them out loud, it sounds really. I think this is kind of why people believe in things like gods. I don't believe in gods. I don't believe in gods at all. I don't think that there are gods. I think there is just us. And I also feel like things can go very wrong. And I feel like it definitely has. Um, I I think, well, I know there are many things that are considered legends and myths or mythology or ancient religions that have this godlikeness to these figures, um, like Greek mythology or whatever. And then, or even Chinese cultures, like Zhonghui, the was actually a real guy, and then over time it changed into like some mythical thing or some mystical thing or whatever. And then there's things like Surawadi and Zoroastrianism. There's a lot of Persian stuff, Sufism, Tarabs, and so on. And the reason I know about a lot of these things is as a result of interacting with, well, there's David, there's Bill Martone, who's my teacher who died shortly before he did. There's another friend of mine, Lexi, who died. There's a number of people that passed away around a similar time as David, very close in the time period. And also what I guess you would consider, I don't fully trust this kind of thing, but like a spirit guide or whatever kind of thing. That's another one I don't want to talk about because it's very personal. Like it's so personal. I don't want to give out those details. It sounds nuts too. It sounds absolutely crazy. I'm very self-aware of this. It sounds just ludicrous. Having said that, in my story, in my in my story, in my the stuff that I'm working on that I've been trying to write for since I was like a teenager. Um, the characters, well, the one character has a dragon, has a spirit dragon, and I used to, I wasn't sure like how to feel about it. It came and it went, and now I'm revisiting again, and so she has her dragon, and there's a reason. There's a reason why this dragon looks this the way it is, based on my own kind of experiences. Actually, let me go pull that up. In my dreams and stuff that I had when I was much younger. And ironically, I have. So here's the dragon right here. This is a color version. And this is a pencil version. This is actually like a mixed media version. And then I had this dream. This is one of the images in the dream. Um, if you've ever heard of Chinese, so this is something I love my husband. He's such a nice, good person. Um, I think I have it. So in Shioji, right here, I have one of the very first English versions of it, which is full of typos. In Shioji, there is a character in this that is very similar to mine. It's the Bailungma, who becomes like a kind of Buddha at the end. And then there's the Hongomong right here. And this one is actually probably way better translated than Shioji. And there's so many interesting cultural things in this stuff. And this is stuff that nobody else talks about. Everybody else wants to just invoke, like, because I hear it all the time. They'll talk about the Book of the Dead, the Tibetan Book of the Dead, the Egyptian Book of the Dead. And it's always Jesus this and Jesus, 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 Jesus Christ, 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 Jesus Christ, Trinity, da da da. Because, you know, you can't think of anything else unless some guy was like, oh, Zen Buddhism. Zen Buddhism. It's Zen. Right? Another one is Djinn. Djinn I probably read like many, many times over. So, I wanted to depict certain things, certain ideas, concepts. Another one that comes up a lot. I love Chinese ghost stories. I love Inuyasha like so much, which Shioji is very Inuyasha, like it's before Inuyasha. It's a Chinese ghost stories. There's literally a movie called or series. There's an anime even. Chinese ghost story. There was some Hong Kong films, and the other dragon characters are there's Takuya. So she's actually a dragon, and this is what she really looks like. I actually made a model of this when I was in college, which my husband fucked up. And then there's the guy, Ao Xingtao, and he's a dragon, but you don't know yet. And there's a lot of fuckery going on in the story. A lot of it. So I'm kind of like working on it. I like dragons a lot. I really do. I love dragons. I also like sharks. That's Jakuya when she's her humanoid form. And that's kind kind of in the songs that I do. I actually wrote. Where's my SoundCloud? I wrote stuff. A long time ago. A long time ago. And I have revisited these things many times over. This one here, I wrote, I think it was in 94. I think it was in high school. Oh, 94, 95, somewhere like that. I was in high school. This one was something that was always in my head in college. I've always had like poems and lyrics go into my head all the time. It's just like a thing. I think in the late Bush era and the early Obama era, there was times when like stuff would come into my mind all the time that I would just like write it down, and then I would feel like weird, like, oh, maybe I'm crazy, maybe I'm insane or whatever. Like, this is, maybe I should hide it or whatever. And I sang a lot of stuff. So this one I wrote when I was 6 years old. This melody, the Blue Fairies one, and I have a dragon version of it. And I can do sound design. I just really suck at doing a master. I can't do a master at all. Like, and I worked in film too, so whatever. But when I come to, I don't know why they don't show all my playlists on my profiles. I have to like manually go to it. So the Gardens of the Future is called Symbiosis Symphion, which is Greek, and I was remaking some other guy's song, because you can remake and remix and do covers of other people's tracks on here. It's a thing you can do. And those are some of my remakes and whatever. And the Gardens of the Future, or no, that's a Mediterranean one. That's right here. That's here. That's there. Also, there's stuff that David does. David does stuff all the time. So I blame all of these on David. This is just normal for me. He just, there's stuff he does. I don't really want to get into it. I can tell when it's him. And this is like, I think I have over 400 songs at this point, or tracks that are up. And there's many different variations of it. I oftentimes can write stuff. I've also done stuff with DeepSeek, ChatGPT blows, and Claude, which Claude is kind of better. I still find that I like it better when I write it myself. Oftentimes when I write stuff myself, you can tell when it's my writing because I have commas, and my use of language is better. I've explored all kinds of music styles. Okay, first of all, for full disclosure, I don't do generic shit, so don't expect generic shit here, ever. Never, ever. I have done some dream house stuff, which I don't consider generic. I've done, so I have a lot of Mediterranean fusion, Middle Eastern fusion. I have a lot of 90s Eurodance techno. I don't do a ton of EDM, however, a lot of my stuff recently has been kind of EDM and glitch hop. I get so frustrated with the AI because it wants to make all of the vocals into punk rocker, headbanger, screaming vocals, which I didn't ask for. But these are stuff that I uploaded, that I recorded, that are Jakuya's songs. I also tried a song version of the poetry from my film, which that was kind of interesting to play with. How I wish I could have done that back in 2019. But I digress. I've also messed around with EBM. There's ways that you can upload like clips and samples of stuff, and then it can like rework it. I also have stuff I just liked other people's, like whatever they spit out and saved here. And then because I'm a weirdo and I like Chinese stuff, there's a style of Chinese language arts called Wanyan, or classical Chinese, or however you want to. Sometimes it's called idioms, sometimes it's called poetry, sometimes it's called language arts. I mean, whatever. Just these things don't translate to English very well. and probably nobody understands what I'm talking about unless you're either A, Chinese, or B, you're in Asia and you can understand some of the like Japanese and some Korean and some maybe South Asian people might it might make sense to them. Like I'll talk about this and sound like blah 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 to anybody that's like Western who doesn't speak Chinese. And I'm not being arrogant, but whatever, you can tell yourself that. Like, Candace is so arrogant. She's so stuck up. She's such a snob. Whatever. Um, I have. If you recognize this name, if you play Pokemon, I'm not gonna tell you why, what, or whatever. But this is a character in my story, and I take a lot of the stuff very seriously as like a creative concept. Another thing has been like very inspiring and cathartic for me, and it keeps coming up constantly, is K-pop Demon Hunters. If you haven't seen K-pop Demon Hunters, I suggest you do. And also, how have you not heard of it or seen it? It's been number one. It's been dominating the charts since June. It won tons of awards. It's really good. The majority of people who worked on it were all rejects. It's the most uniquely different, original bit of content I've ever seen. It's going to be your new earworm. The music is so good. It's so freaking good. The story is good. I'm tired of junk media. I'm so tired of always the same movie being remade over. Like, how many freaking times can you do Batman? I love Batman, but like seriously, how many times can you do Superman? How many times? Like I'm just so fed up, and it's like now we have to make everybody non-white and gay, non-binary, whatever. Like I'm not hating, but I'm like you can't come up with something. You couldn't come up with a non-binary thing on your own. Ancient people did. Like I just. Like, they turned She-Ra into, like, a lesbian fest, which I don't know how I feel about it. I like the original She-Ra. I don't know why you didn't just make a, a story with your own original characters, because that would have been cool. But you took She-Ra and did it. Whatever. Whatever. Anyway, then of course there's this new. Actually, I don't know if I want to show the URL. I don't think I have actually shown this yet. It just opened up. Recently, and am I logged in? And yeah, I don't think there's any notifications for me. Probably, yeah. Oh, well, apparently there is. Okay, well, that's a thing. Can I upload things now? Has it been fixed? It's a new fledgling website. It's new. It's for animators, but the file size is so tiny. 5 megs. It's like we're in 1999. Okay, well, that's a thing. Let's see. Is it gonna let me actually like upload a file? So supposedly your files have to be under 5 megs, which is what this is. And will it upload? I've been constantly getting errors with this. So, yeah, no. So that's a no. So I don't know how tiny the files are. It's such a struggle to try and get anything to work. But these are the things I have up currently, which is just not. I have so many thoughts. I'm so happy about this. I can't even express how happy I am about it. Simultaneously, I have the mixed feeling and the divided feelings of it's not working. It's just these are my suggestions and thoughts and feelings and stuff. And yeah, mixed feelings. I like the idea of it though. I really do. And I don't want to give the URL because I have a stalker problem. I really have a stalker problem. And so generally you have all these videos of, no AI stuff. Oh wow, I like that. Oh my god, I like that. Oh my god, I really like that. Wow, I like it so much. I'm gonna follow and give it a heart. Oh my goodness. Okay, so I'm a traditional animator actually. I studied to be like a Disney style animator, like a keyframe artist. The creme de la creme, the most difficult of whatever. Because of course I would. Of course I would do that. And now here we are, where art is dead. Anyway. So, hopefully that wasn't too rambly, but I'm gonna end this now.